26 black-owned companies have been referred to the National Treasury for possible blacklisting by Eskom, with TAPSOSA questioning whether due process was followed. Now, the association is also raising concerns about the impact of blacklisting on transformation and employment. Now, to talk further about this, we're now joined by TAPSOSA spokesperson Sindiswa Changuion. Sindiswa, thank you so much for your time. Now, TAPSOSA says 26 black-owned companies were referred for blacklisting. Now, this was without due process. Why do you believe this is targeted?
I think firstly, we need to categorically state as an association, thank you very much for inviting us in the first place. But I think firstly, we still need to state categorically as an association that, you know, with regards to state-owned entities, especially Eskom, in terms of being able to actually make sure that they make sure that companies that they are referring to the National Treasury to be blacklisted, there's due processes that have happened. And within that particular process, they need to actually make sure that they've exhausted all internal measures to make sure that those companies are able to defend themselves accordingly in terms of the processes that need to be undertaken by Eskom. We need to actually acknowledge that Eskom has to actually do that within its mandate to be able to do that, to identify maladministration or to identify any corruption that has happened. But we're saying that within that particular process, there is a selective process that has happened within Eskom in terms of being able to affect certain companies, not all the 26 companies that have been referred to the National Treasury are the ones that are labeled as being fraudulent and have done corrupted activities that is listed within the blacklisting that has happened within Eskom. And we are raising an issue with regards to that because some of those companies that have been referred to Eskom, by Eskom to National Treasury to be blacklisted, it had nothing to do with them being fraudulent or being corrupted. And that is the issue that we're actually raising, because some of that has got to do with operational issues that have got nothing to do with them being able to involve in corruption.
Now, Sindiswa, you question whether procurement rules are applied consistently. Now, what evidence do you perhaps have of all of this?
You know, we, for some time now, we have actually wrote to Eskom. In fact, we saw this coming a long time ago because we've had interactions with Eskom with regards to these particular issues. Some of those companies that are listed in those 26 companies are companies that the issue has started a long time ago. I think from the suspension of the former security manager of Eskom, that Karen Play, that has subsequently been fired. And from there, then there was selective targeting of selective companies that actually were whistleblowers in terms of those particular issues. And you should understand that in terms of that particular case that have happened, is that even those companies that have been implicated from doing wrongdoing, in terms of that particular case, there's nothing that has happened to those companies. Instead, the very same companies that have actually been the ones that were whistleblowing with regards to the issue that has transpired in terms of the corruption activities that was undertaken at that time, those are the companies that have been targeted now. And those are the companies that have found themselves being blacklisted through Treasury by Eskom. But you know what happened is that they actually formed a particular committee, and a committee that was actually looking back at companies that were doing business with Eskom 10 years ago. And within that, they had said that they wanted to actually look at the fraudulent activities. And as I said to you from the beginning, there's nothing wrong with Eskom for them to be able to actually go back and being able to look at companies that have been doing wrongdoing. And because of the systematic corruption and you know, fraudulent activities that have been taking place within the utility, they've got every right to actually do that. But do not use a selective approach in terms of you being able to settle scores and be able to actually target some of the companies that were actually doing right, and you are using certain information that has got operational activities within that, and you are using that as in terms of you being able to actually list them as them being fraudulent, and even list their directors as them being fraudulent and corrupt, and then blacklist them from doing business with the state.
Now, Sindiswa, what exactly is it that you would like Treasury to do? And if they do not intervene, what legal action will TAPSOSA be taking?
You know what? One of the things that needs to happen, the National Treasury has got an oversight. It's got a responsibility that it needs to make sure that in terms of blacklisting, there's two sides of a story. There's not one side of the story. You cannot take one side of a story from Eskom and willy-nilly blacklist the company without even affording them an opportunity. Even those companies have even applied through the courts of the law for the National Treasury and Eskom to disclose the information in terms of why they have been blacklisted. And National Treasury has not been forthcoming with information. Neither has Eskom been forthcoming with information. Instead, what they have done is that they have provided information that had got to do with some of those companies in terms of them being able to not having fulfilled their SLA conditions, and which is an operational issue. And within that, there's also merits within those companies that have indicated that they have done what they could be able to do from able to fulfill their contractual obligations. And now you are taking the same companies and you're taking them to the National Treasury. The National Treasury did not even afford those companies even a right of reply in terms of being able to be blacklisted, and you willy-nilly blacklist these companies without even them affording an opportunity. It's not fair. And you say that, and after that, what you do is that you blacklist those companies. From blacklisting those companies, you are saying that they are fraudulent. You're saying that these companies were corrupt. And after that, you also list their directors as well as being corrupt and fraudulent. Can you just mention in terms of what ramifications that has? Again, when you blacklist those companies in terms of whatever that you have alluded to as well, is that the employees that are impacted within those companies, because some of those companies employ about 3,000 or 4,000 security personnel in the industry. Those security personnel have got families and they've got extended families. The impact that it has in terms of that part of people being employed. And you as government, you are saying that you need to be able to promote entrepreneurship and make sure that at least it's fair, transparent process, and you're not dealing with that.
Sindiswa, thank you so much for your time there. We hope to receive a response from Eskom with regards to these allegations. Sindiswa there speaking on behalf of those 26 black-owned companies which are alleged to be targeted by Eskom.